folks. So I am back after my first week at the new job with a video that was actually recorded the weekend before I started my new position. So this was a lot of anxiety coming out and needing to be streamlined a bit. A lot of me thinking about what it means to find meaning when you are also trying to survive, and pull a lot of different spinning plates back into order and kind of stack them a little bit, to go a little far with that metaphor. So I decided to use these scraps of poster paper. I think I went and bought it at Rite Aid, 2 for $1, maybe some other cheap shop, maybe it was the dollar store. And I cut them down to all different shapes and sizes, mostly just rectangles and some squares, but I really like to cut them up into triangular pieces as well, and I might even do something circular. So I had pulled a few of those out and chosen this one when I came up with an idea about what I wanted to draw. It was tall enough in this portrait shape that I knew that I could get the height required for the body that I'm painting right now. And I just went and sketched it, and I had to use my phone as reference. It's actually kind of a self-portrait, at least for the outfit and the pose. So sometimes I use myself for reference, sometimes I use my friends. I had a friend actually pose so I could take some photos of how her body sort of rolled or like folded when you arch your back, like when you're putting one shoulder back and your back arches a little bit, and I wanted to get that accurate, like where exactly does your rib cage and your shoulder and kind of that back fat area, so to speak, rolls a little bit, and I find that so beautiful and intriguing. And my that particular friend is fairly slender, so it was really cool to kind of see a more slender body than my own do some interesting things in the same places. And we just have this myth that if you are thinner, then you have a healthy body automatically, and that you don't have to do any work, or that you are automatically happy, that you are status quo, and etc., etc. And we have such a false idea that, so many people have cellulite. It's okay. Plenty of people have stretch marks because we grow, and that's what our skin does. So, I have skinny girlfriends who don't mind me calling them skinny, and it's not a slur. And I have thick or fat or whichever word that they are reclaiming for their plus size bodies, friends who have stretch marks too, and sometimes in different places. And, and I struggle with it. I've gotten some new stretch marks this past summer, and in a couple new places. And I keep thinking, but I am growing. That's what that means. So Cat Williams, who is a fairly controversial person and comedian, I particularly like one of his jokes where, of course, it's a heterosexual couple that he's making the joke toward, or, as an example, but, and he's speaking from the perspective of, I believe, a heterosexual man, as he says, like, we don't care if you have stretch marks. It means either you were smaller and you got bigger, or you were bigger and now you're smaller. Like, that doesn't matter. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing. So, anyway, to get back to my process a little bit, I use lots of different references, including some Instagram models and older photos and etc. But for this one, I happen to really like this photo that I took, and I love this bodysuit. I got it at a nearby thrift store that has these really great pieces, and this is so thin and stretchy, and this really beautiful bright color. So I actually just really wanted to kind of capture that. Now, all of that to say that I also chose this particular photo for reference because although I had an idea that I wanted to do more body positive watercoloring, which if you follow my Instagram, you'll see is one of my favorite things to do, especially lately in this past summer. But because of the Inktober 2018 prompts, the second day I have combined the first three, and I think I'll keep doing that to help me keep up with Inktober a little bit more. I find this time of year to be so busy, especially when I was in college and the semester was at that breaking point, and I've just never found the time to really participate before, and I wanted to make it a little easier on myself. And so the second day was tranquil, and I felt body positive and I felt one with myself, and it was the first time I had the privacy, like I mentioned, all the the plates spinning. I've been couch surfing for the past couple weeks, and I will be moving into a room and then applying for an apartment and moving in there. First the room this upcoming week, and then the apartment hopefully in a month or two. And, but this was the first time where I had a little bit of privacy to change and not have to wear pants, and to have that space to think and not be in the midst of stress. And this summer, while I was dealing with my family emergency, I also didn't have any personal space due to the house that I was staying at, and just being in a completely different place from where I am set up. So I am rebuilding my little setup here in Baltimore. And I also include the mushroom because I love mushrooms, and as I mentioned, I love them aesthetically, and then I also have done quite a bit of studying on psychedelics, and so there's kind of a fun little symbolism, and I decided to use that for the first day's prompt of poisonous, which I wrote down a little synonym of death dealing. I thought that was so cool, but I ended up not really using it in this project. And then the third day's prompt was roasted, which helped me pick my color scheme with the reds and the sunset background, and how the yellow really fits in, and the red mushroom too. And I looked at different photos, and then I decided on that classic. And here I'm using Heavy Body Artist Loft white acrylic paint, and doing those little dots. And this gives it a nice texture. I'm not a big fan of the thinner, watery, regular body acrylic paints, because I love that little bit of chunk that acrylic can bring, but I much prefer, if I'm just going for color, to use my watercolors. I feel like I have better control. And you'll see here that I am a little distracted and put my finger right into that paint. So I'm admiring it and figuring out where to go next. And I decide to add some more pencil details for that texture. So I end up trying to fix it, and it comes out okay. You'll see in the close-ups at the end. You'll also see that I have incense blowing, which is the smoke going across the screen, and you'll get to see the outdoor setup, including the tripod that I was very excited to be using and have a little too high, which is why I'm a little too zoomed out. And I'm learning. This is not in portrait mode, so I'm glad I didn't make that mistake. And so I played around with that Z for a long time, and it didn't work. So I ended up going with some collage elements from that pouch that I think have also been pulled out for my cover. If you haven't seen that process, they were the last two videos for my semi-daily journal, where I wrote down my Inktober prompts that I was just reading from, but also where I doodle in the corners and try to really write down the words that I find harder to do in my real art journal. And here I'm playing with scraps. So this is one of my favorite fabric tape pieces, which I got from Flying Tiger in Europe. and they're a really cool, like, little cheap shop that has the most adorable products for, I mean, very, very cheap, just a couple dollars. And I got a pack of fabric tapes when I was there with a friend. And then this is a little vintage label from the usual vintage vendor, Crafty Lisa's Vintage. Her shop will be available in January 2019. She is still dealing with the move that enabled me to be able to get the D-Stash box and this huge collection of ephemera that you'll see me pulling from and mentioning over and over. And there's this awkward pause here, and I wanted to keep it in because I didn't know what to do, and I was starting to get a little anxious again. I knew I wanted mixed media, but I didn't want to cover things because I really liked my watercolor. And this is when I pull out my journal and flip through and try to think a little bit more, just to calm myself back down and to not pressure myself, because it should be a fun process. It should be therapeutic, and it may be a challenge, but it doesn't have to be a negative one. So I'm playing with layering these pieces instead, including also the little color swatch that was aptly named Sunset with this beautiful tangerine color. I had to use it. So appropriate. But you've seen me pull out its siblings if you've seen any of my other videos. And that was pretty cool as well to use up. And I'll have to make some more, so maybe I'll make a whole video to show some examples of not just markers, but other mediums that you can use and how you can name it, and how it's this very simple process that you can do when you're really tired and after work, which is probably when I would take the video, is after a long day and I want to be a little bit crafty, but I don't have a lot of energy or thought left in my brain. So I'm getting very close to the end where you'll see the close-ups, and this is very close to being finished. It's a little minimalist and a little bit of mixed media, and it's my first 3-day prompts. And I decided to include this as a post-crossing video because I could use it as a postcard, and that's actually what I cut these little pieces of cardstock poster board for. But it could be just a print or something like that. And I may end up selling my Inktober prompts, or some of them. I have been trying to sell some little postcard bundles, 3 for $10 US, including shipping. So feel free to comment or contact me. You can also reach out on Instagram, and that's where I've been trying to sell them if you're interested. And so here's some nice natural lighting outdoor photos. And I think that's coming up on the end of all I have to say for this. I'm glad that I got to use a little bit of the process, or share a little bit of the process. And thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to your feedback, and I'll be back within the next week with another process video for you. All right, bye-bye.